अच्युतं केशवं रामनारायणं कृष्णदामोदरं वासुदेवं हरिं श्रीधरं माधवं गोपिकावल्लभं जानकीनायकं रामचन्द्रं भजे अच्युतं केशवं सत्यभामाधवं माधवं श्रीधरं राधितं इन्दिरामन्दिरं चेतसा सुन्दरं देवकी नन्दनं नन्दजं सन्ददे।
ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम। सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृति पुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तो पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्ति भेद विभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। उकारस्वन्धकारो वैरुकारस्तन्निवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्तगोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। Let's look at the verse 16. मेधावी पुरुषो विद्वान् ऊहापोह विचक्षणः अधिकारी आत्मविद्यायाम् उक्तलक्षणलक्षितः। We saw that the person needs to have a certain qualification in order to gain this jnanam or the knowledge. We can call it as cognitive knowledge, because this is not like any other knowledge where you objectify the object of knowledge. Or is it a witness perception of the aspects that happen, say, in the case of emotions and all that, where you are witnessing the emotion, right? So that is a witness perception. So it is neither a witness perception or is it a direct perception, but this is a knowledge which is gained of the subject itself. So we can call it, for the lack of better word, as cognitive knowledge. A knowledge of what is your true self. And in order for you to gain that, we already saw that you can't employ a means which is available to you, like direct perception, inference, examples and all those stuff, because they work in the realm or in the domain of objectified world. And this knowledge is about the subject, and also the subject being all that is here. So which means it needs a different kind of vritti, a kind of process of knowing, and that is called as the cognitive knowledge. In order to gain this cognitive knowledge, the obstruction is not only in the form of your intellectual abilities, but also can be in the form of your emotional state. Because this falsifies your ego, the individuality, the emotional being in you can become an obstruction. Therefore, the preparedness is both in terms of your intellectual capacity to learn this, as well as the emotional being to be in a state where it can receive this kind of a knowledge and be able to assimilate it. That's why Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Krishnarjuna Samvade is how the Bhagavad Gita is described. It has both aspects, Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. Even the Vedas talk about both these paths, pravritti nivritti margaha. Hence, the preparation for one needs to be on both sides, the emotional preparedness as well as intellectual preparedness. Here, Medhavi Purusho Vidwan, Uha Poha Vichakshanaha, Adhikari Atma Vidyaya, Mukta Lakshana Lakshitaha, is talking about the intellectual preparation. So, you should have the right kind of memory. You should have the ability to sit and listen first and be able to assimilate what is being spoken. So, you should have a certain language skill, right? You should know, let's say you are sitting and listening to an English lecture of Vedanta, right? So, you need to have both linguistic traits, right? You need to understand English, the words that are used, and the Sanskrit words, because it's the words which are going to convey the vision to you. So the right appreciation of the words are very important. Suppose I say God. What comes to your mind is somebody sitting in the heaven with a long beard. Then there is a problem, right? So I'll be communicating a certain thing by using the word God, but you will be understanding it in a totally different way. Suppose I say punya or papa, and then you think of it like a sin. Papa means a sin. So then what about punya, right? How do you understand that? So these are all a problem. So you need to understand exactly what is being communicated, and for that to happen, you need to have the right kind of linguistic knowledge, and the teacher also should convey what is meant by the word. That's why we don't use the word called God, right? If you use God, the receiver will have different connotations for God, depending on how the background of the person, right? The person is from a missionary school. The term God means something totally different. If a person is from a communist school, it's very different, right? In fact, when somebody says God doesn't exist, it only means they have a notion of God. For you to say something doesn't exist, you should first have a understanding of what it is, your own understanding, right? Otherwise, you can't say it doesn't exist. So what you're effectively dismissing is your own notion about what do you think God is. That's what you are dismissing. When you are dismissing, there is no God. And many times, we kind of agree with you. I mean, if that is what the God is, then you can have an option of dismissing that kind of a God. I mean, you can dismiss or you can believe, because it's a matter of belief. So dismissing the existence of that God is also a belief, and accepting that kind of a God is also a belief, because it's the God in the heaven is a matter for belief. But when we say Bhagavan or Ishvara, we are not talking about somebody sitting somewhere else. We are talking about all that is here and in the form of material and intelligent cause. That kind of a God who is omnipresent is what we are talking about. That's why we use the term Ishvara, not God. And then that Ishvara has to be explained appropriately by the person who is teaching it. Then only you can understand it the same way. So, in a nutshell, what we are trying to say is the person has to be a medhavi. The person should have the ability to assimilate what is being spoken. In a nutshell, understand the language that is being used and the contours of the words which are being used, how they are used, what is intended to be conveyed. In a nutshell, keep in mind that the memory should be so good that you have the context, how it started, and how it is being carried forward, and how it is being expounded. All these need to be remembered, so that you get the full picture of what is being spoken about. So that medhavi, it has to. So see, here again, these need to be understood as a relatively a good kind of preparedness is what we are looking for. It's not that we are looking for an absolute star, right? So that many people who think, oh, I'm not that brilliant, my memory is weak. So I'm little aged, I don't understand the language appropriately. So there can be a certain kind of hesitation the moment we talk about qualification. So that this kind of qualification is more an apatatam. It needs to be reasonable. It is just to point the areas where you need to work on. Just make sure that you are focusing on these aspects, making yourself available, spending enough time to understand the language, paying attention to how a word is being defined. This is what is being pointed to here, not to judge you, right? Or make you self-judge yourself and then come back with a kind of guilt that, oh, I'm not that good in memory, I'm not that good in Sanskrit language, or my English is poor. So it's not being self-critical that this is being spoken about. It is just to make you alert and point you to the areas where you want to focus on. So that look at it in that context. So Medhavi Purushaha, Vidwan. Vidwan means it's not like, oh, this is not for me. This is only for big Vidwans only, who are like, who can do Nyaya, Samavaya Sambandha Avachinna, Samyoga Nishta Karyata, Nirupita Karanata, Tadda Avachinna, all those things. If I don't talk, then I'm not a Vidwan. Don't think like that. Vidwan means so long as you have an ability to do reasoning, which most of us have. When it comes to the worldly affairs, we all do reasoning, right? Think of you talking about the political aspect, your politics. You all give so much of political ideas to people, right? So that means what? You have a way to, your mind, everybody's mind has a certain way to logically look at things. And so just employ that logical, intellect into the Vedantic listening and studies. That's what is being called for here. Vidwan, Uha Poha Vichakshanaha, who can look at pros and cons, fors and against of a certain aspect, and then arrive at a logically, that through conclusion. So that's what is needed. Adhikari Atma Vidyaya Ukta Lakshana Lakshitaha. These kind of people are the qualified ones. I mean, typically people who have studied science, maths, and those kind of subjects in today's context are good enough. In those days, people didn't have this kind of an educational system. So they would do memorizing of Vedas. But then have they really studied the logic like Nyaya Shastra or Mimamsa Shastra? That is what is being asked for. Because you have to remember, this was composed almost 700 years back or even more. Okay. So that, I mean, if it is by Adi Shankara, it is at the minimum 1300 years back, right? So we don't know how much. So the assumption is that Adi Shankara himself has composed. That's the case, then yeah, it's pretty aged, right? So the context of when this was composed is very different. So that's where the ask is to have a Medhavi who can do a logical thinking. So that, who can do arguments. That would be a very, very unique in those days. But in today's educational context, Medha may be a little bit, memorizing is something that is a little bit going out of vogue these days. Even though in our childhood, we used to memorize all the tables. We used to memorize. 5 3s are 15, 5 4s are 20, 5 5s are 25, and all that. Okay. But nowadays, the memorizing as a skill is not enforced in schools, right? The education system is only about understanding and being able to explain it and all that stuff, right? But we also used to have memorizing in our school days, though, especially in the language classes. So that we used to memorize poems. So a lot of poems in Tamil and Sanskrit and English we used to memorize. In fact, we used to memorize big chemistry answers. If you don't understand a lot of those questions, we used to just memorize the answers. I remember even during my class 12, I used to memorize a few answers because I didn't understand them. I tried to understand, I never understood. What I did was I just memorized it. Word to word, right? From first word to the last word, I memorized the whole answer. And then just vomited in the exams, and I got the marks as well, right? So the Medha is something that it's an ability that we have to build, the ability to memorize, the ability to remember. it's good to have. I mean, a lot of people who talk Vedanta Shastra these days, you can see them quote from here and there. Think of Adi Shankaracharya's works itself. The kind of quotations he brings in. See, he was not in an age where there was computer where you can just go and search for any quote, right? So he had to quote it out of his memory, and he should know all the texts and know exactly from where what to quote. And all his quotations are all very, very apt, relevant. He just uses the one that is exactly fitting to that context. Because there are many sentences about Brahman, but the sentences of Brahman, which is relevant to the context here, is what he chooses, which means he should have a comprehensive view of all the Shastras, not just Vedas and Upanishads, but also he quotes from Smriti, from Bhagavad Gita, from Mahabharata, and from Dharma Shastra. So there are many things he quotes, which means he need to have had that extraordinary grasp of what is going on everywhere. And in the Mimamsa Bhashya, in Brahmasutra Bhashya, he even quotes, people, Vaikanasa and all this, right? So, the other Bhagavata, so that he talks about every kind of refuting religions, Purvapakshi also. That means he needed to have had a tremendous memory in order to be able to remember all that. First, he should have studied them, which is okay. Maybe he spent time to study, but to just remember the exact quotes, so that's not anything that talks about Medha. So that I'm not saying we all need to have that kind of a Medha, but at least a relative. So that level of Medha is needed. Go to verse 17. Vivekino viraktasya shamadi gunashalinaha mumukshoreva hi brahma jignasa yogyata mata. Now the second aspect of qualification, which is the emotional qualification. So that the intellectual qualification has already been covered. Look at the emotional qualification. Vivekinaha. So that viraktasya shamadi gunashalinaha. So that Viveka, you can say, can be considered a little bit of intellectual as well. But honestly speaking, Viveka also is about emotional only. Many times people translate this Viveka as Nitya Vastu Viveka, what is Brahman and what is not Brahman. That Viveka should be there. Here we are talking about qualification for somebody who needs to gain mokshas, who needs to gain the knowledge still. So how can anybody who hasn't even got the knowledge be able to do Viveka? Oh, this is Brahman, this is not Brahman. So that's not possible, right? So we can't translate it as having a Viveka of what is Brahman and not Brahman, but Viveka in terms of the fact that the world that you are experiencing and the activities that you are doing, the pursuits that you are going after are not permanent. They are not going to give you a result which is permanent. So that kind of a discrimination, ability to recognize that what I am actually seeking is freedom from insecurity, freedom from unhappiness, freedom from limitations, freedom from lack of knowledge, and these kind of the freedom that you are actually seeking is not going to be gained by doing certain activities and accumulating limited things. So you are actually seeking the unlimited. So that seeking of unlimited, the result of it cannot be gained by adding a few finite things. So that 100 finite entities is not going to make you infinite. So the unlimited cannot be gained by gaining certain limited ends. So that is the clarity that one needs to gain, which is called Viveka. So that understanding that the world only gives you limited ends. That's Viveka. The person should at least be in a position to finalize, have a firm conviction after analyzing that all that I am seeking this world in the form of security, as in money or happiness or relationships or possessions or that positions, like I want to become a manager and all that, these are not going to make me fulfilled. These will only lead me into further pursuits and all the time longing to become different. So that I want to be different. I want to become something. So that attitude, approach of me wanting to becoming something else. So that kind of a seeker, so that is not going to become what he wants by doing these kind of activities. So I want liberation, freedom from the the wanting to become something else. The one who wants to change the ecosystem, the one who wants to change his environment, who wants to be different in terms of me as a person. So that kind of a wanting me, I seem to be wanting in terms of knowledge, wanting in terms of my existence, my time, wanting in terms of happiness, wanting in terms of security. This wanting me, this limited me who all the time is struggling, is not going to get fulfilled by adding a few more possessions. So that clarity should come. Then only the person is fit for this pursuit. Otherwise, don't disturb that person. Don't go and tell him that, oh, this world is all limited. He's not going to listen, he or she, right? They are fully into what they are doing today. So let them do. Na buddhi vedam janayet ajnanam karma sangina. So, I mean, you will only be confusing them. But those who have that clarity, they are fit to actually start the pursuit. Vivekina. Then viraktasya. So that is a relative, reasonable mental calmness. So that raga means crush for worldly things. And virakti, how does it come? By being objective about things. Why do you have raga? Why do you have a certain obsession towards things? People are after money in a big way. Why? Because they think money is what is going to secure them. But then is money going to secure them? No, you will feel insecure even after gaining a lot of money, right? Because you need to keep the money, you need to protect the money, you need to protect the value for the money. There is a time value for money. So that you have to continue earning, you need to continue multiplying, and then you have to protect it. All the time you are just a custodian of the money that you have earned. So that all the time that is also going to lead you to certain kind of vexation, frustration, and you're going to spoil all your life just trying to protect it. So it's actually making you insecure, not so that, right? It has certain buying power, good. I mean, good to have money, right? Nobody says, but it can't be the final goal. So why is then that obsession for money? Because there is what is called a shobhanadhyasa. You are superimposing a certain qualities on money, which it actually doesn't have. The poor money has its own ability in terms of giving you the buying power, but it doesn't have the ability to secure you. That is something that you have superimposed on it. It doesn't have. It never claimed that it has all that. That is called shobhanadhyasa. And that is there with everything. You look at a person and think this person is who is going to give me all the great, composure, comfort, happiness, all that, right? But that is a person, another person. That person also has certain expectations and all limitations and all that, right? But your mind has done shobhanadhyasa, superimposition of certain qualities that the person doesn't possess. So there also it is. So it's always about what you superimpose, how you perceive the world. Everybody perceives the world in their own way, his or her own way. Colored perception. Like everybody, one guy is wearing a blue colored glass, another one is wearing a red colored sunglasses. And then accordingly the world looks. So it's a very subjective world. So becoming more and more objective towards it is what is called vairagya, viraktaha. Yes. So that's what is there. That's it. Don't add things to it. Don't superimpose your own notions. So that this do's and don'ts. Yeah, I'm not. So just because I said don't do it, you are not going to be able to not do it, right? So what we are saying is just look at it, see where you are doing Shobhanatyasa, just analyze. Am I actually doing Shobhanatyasa? Is it the value that it actually possesses? Just analyze, observe. That's all you are asking. That is called Vairagya, Viraktasya. Otherwise, if you say develop Vairagya for money, who is going to develop? Just because I am saying develop Vairagya, will you be in a position to develop? No. But if I ask you to be objective towards it, look at it in the right way, that you can do. So that's where we need to actually understand these words properly. Shamadhi guna shalina. Certain virtues you need to develop. And so that is going to be spoken about. Shama, Dhamma, Uparati, Titiksha, all that later. We will talk about it. But these are certain traits that you work on. So that in your mind. Okay. Then mumukshoho, moktu vicha. We have already seen this. That the word that I am pursuing, the limited ends that I am pursuing is not going to get me the goal that I want. So I want moksha. Has to be very clear. That is a mumukshoho. Then Brahma Jignasa. That mumukshu has to become a Jignasu. That also we covered in the earlier session. The freedom, liberation cannot come if I am intrinsically limited. If I am intrinsically a limited person, there is no way I am going to be able to come out of it. But suppose I am not a limited being, I am an unlimited, but due to ignorance I am assuming me to be limited, then there is a solution. Otherwise, there is no solution to this. You go anywhere, you remain limited. So that solution is what Shruti is saying is there. And for that, you need to understand who you are. Then your mumuksha becomes Jignasa. So that you are a seeker of knowledge. That is Brahma Jignasa. Once you are a seeker of knowledge, then the pursuit starts. These are the emotional qualifications. Now, so that verse 18, Sadhanan yatra chatvari katitani manishibhi yeshu satsu eva sannishta tadabhavena siddhyati. So that chatvari sadhanani atra katitani manishibhi. By great people, 4 kinds of sadhanas means are prescribed. 4-fold, not 4 types, 4-fold means. Because all 4 together you need to have, right? Not option. Those are the sadhanas. Yeshu satsu eva san nishta. The sad, the nishta, your ability to focus on Brahman and be steadfast in it is possible only when you have this 4-fold qualification, in the absence of which it is not possible. Yadabhave na sintyati. Now what are these 4? Adau nitya nitya vastu vivekaha pariganyate iha mutra bala bhoga viragaha tadanantaram. So that samadhi shatka sampatti mumukshuttamiti sputam. So there are 4 things. Nitya nitya vastu viveka is the first one. So that nitya vastu vivekaha is counted first. Then iha mutra bala bhoga viragaha. That is the second one. Then third one is Shamadhi, Shatka Sampatti, and fourth one is Mukshutvam. So that okay. The Viveka, we just spoke about that. What is going to give me the freedom that I am seeking? So that infinite that I am seeking. So that Purnatvam, the totality, to become the Purna, the one that is limitless. So that Purnatvam that I am seeking, you need to understand that your limited gains are not going to get you there. Any amount of finite additions is not going to give you infinity. That is Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. Then Ihamutra Pala Bhoga Viragaha, we have said you have to be objective. See, Amutra Pala means what? Going to some Swarga, heaven. So that is it going to give me? What I'm seeking? Is it going to is it having the value, the real value that I'm superimposing on it? Okay, maybe I can get the better body, better food, better, kalpataru and all that there, whatever I want I can get, but is that going to give me the full satisfaction? After some time I may get bored. Right? So you need to just be objective about that as well. That is the Ihamutra Bala Bhoga Viraga. So then there are qualities called Shama, Dama, Uparati, Titiksha and all that, which are 6 set of qualities, which is again emotional quality which need to be there. And finally Mumukshutvam, which we just spoke about. If these 4 are there, then the person is qualified. Brahma Satyam Jagan Nitya Dyevam Rupa Vinishchayaha. Verse 20. Soyam Nitya Nityavastu Viveka Samudakritaha. So what is that Nitya Nityavastu Viveka? Okay. Traditionally we say Brahma Satyam Jagan Nitya. This is the Nitya Nitya Viveka. But I don't even know this Brahman yet, because I am talking about qualification. So what is this Mithya? That also is not known. But relatively, because somebody has told you, so much of word in the air, you have heard, oh, there is something called Brahman, that alone is Satyam. It is limitless. See, Brahma here can be translated as just limitlessness, that's it. Okay, the limitlessness, if it is real, then this Jagat which I am pursuing is actually not going to get me that. That is Mithya. That kind of understanding here is what is called as Nitya Nityavastu Viveka. Get that? So you don't know the Brahman. Because if I know the Brahman, then I can say Brahma Satyam. Then it's not about qualification. Then I'm already a Jnani. But here we are talking about qualification. Therefore, it is your own relative understanding of limitless. You still haven't seen what is that limitless. But at the same time, if there is something called such a limitless, the limited additions cannot give me that limitless, is what you recognize. Okay, verse 20. Now verse 21. Tadvairagyam jihasaya darshana shravanadibihi dehadi brahma paryante hi anitye bhogavastuni. So what is Vairagyam? Is what is the next verse. We will see that in the next session. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So that